The dragon landed silently outside the human shelter, its massive claws crushed steel like paper inside. The shadows one terrified human waited to die across. The galaxy this dragon was feared as the deadliest living weapon ever created had burned. Planets destroyed, armies executed thousands without mercy, and tonight the aliens gave it one final order: kill the last human survivor. But when the dragon finally looked into the human's eyes, it refused, and that single choice started a war that would destroy an empire. ****. The Xyrax Empire ruled the galaxy through terror and tire. Planets surrendered the moment their black warships appeared in the sky. No one dared to fight back anymore, because the empire possessed something far worse than weapons, something alive. A dragon named Varthos across the stars. His name became a nightmare whispered in fear. Children cried when they heard stories about him. Armies abandoned their worlds instead of facing him. Cities burned under his fire. Fleets disappeared into ashes, and no target had ever survived after the dragon was sent. But Varthos was not born a monster years ago. The Xyrax hunted his family deep inside the volcanic world of Draknorthi. Baby dragon watched his parents die beneath plasma cannons and falling fire. The plasma cannons and falling fire. The makes it they makes each new decision. That makes each new decision easier than ever. The Xyrax hunted his family deep inside the volcanic world of Draknorthi. Baby Dragon Warthebe. Baby Dragon Warth, Davy Dragon, watched his parents die beneath plasma cannons and falling fire. The Cinnabiot play. Empire captured him in chains while he screamed beside their bodies. From that day forward his life became endless pain. The aliens raised him inside underground laboratories hidden beneath their capital. Scientists shocked him with energy, whip-starved him for weeks, lacked him in darkness, and forced him to obey every command. If he resisted, they tortured him harder. If he showed mercy, they punished him against lowly. The young dragon changed. The kindness inside him disappeared. The fear disappeared. Onelli rage remained. The empire turned him into the perfect weapon, cold, violent, unstoppable. Meanwhile humanity had already fallen. Earth was gone, reduced to broken ruins floating silently through space. Human survivors scattered across hidden colonies like ghosts, trying to escape extinction. Most aliens believed humans would soon disappear forever. But then the Emperor discovered an ancient secret deep inside forbidden records. He found the name of a human survivor called Elias. The records claimed Elias carried lost knowledge connected to dragon's knowledge, powerful enough to threaten the empire itself. The Emperor immediately gave one order: find the human, kill him before the truth spreads. And, as always, there was only one creature chosen for the mission: Varthoshi. Dragon crossed the galaxy like a living shadow. His giant wings blocked the stars as he approached a frozen mining world called Narration. The planet was lifeless, and cold snowstorms covered endless fields of broken metal and abandoned machines. Human workers survived there by repairing old mining equipment for scraps of food. Among them was Elias, and like the others, Elias lived alone near the edge of the frozen wasteland. He spent his days fixing damaged machines inside an old repair station. Buried beneath ice, nobody knew much about him. Some believed he was hiding from the Empire. Others believed he had simply lost hope long ago. That night the storm became violent. Workers rushed into shelters as the sky suddenly darkened. Then came the sound, a deep roar that shook the entire valley. People froze in terror because they knew exactly what had Ari Vedverthos landed outside The mining station, with enough force to crack the frozen ground beneath him, smoke escaped from his jaws. His glowing eyes scanned the buildings, searching for Elias. The workers hid silently, waiting for death to come, but something unexpected happened as the dragon moved forward. Pain suddenly shot through his body. One of the engines from an old defense cannon had exploded. During landing, sharp piece of metal was buried deep inside his wing. Dark blood dripped onto the snow. Varthos growled angrily and prepared to continue the mission anyway. Then the repair station door slowly opened. A human stepped outside, not with a weapon, not with fear, but with a small repair kit in his hands. Elias looked directly at the wounded dragon, then quietly spoke, "You are hurt," for the first time in his entire life. Wethos hesitated. Wethos should have killed the human that very night. That was his mission. That was all he had ever known. But instead of attacking, the dragon remained hidden beyond the frozen mountains, watching the small human settlement from the shadows. Every night he returned, silently. His massive body moved through the snowstorms like a ghost. No alarms detected him. No workers noticed the glowing eyes staring at them from the darkness. And every night, Varthos watched Elias. The human lived in worse conditions than most prisoners inside the Empire. His repair station barely had heat. The roof leaked melted ice water. Half his machines were broken. Sometimes he barely had enough food for himself. Yet somehow Elias always helped others first. When heaters failed inside the workers' shelters, Elias repaired them without asking for payment. When children became sick from the freezing winds, Elias stayed awake through the night, fixing oxygen filters and warming units. If families had no food, Elias quietly shared his own supplies, even when his stomach remained empty afterward. Varthos watched all of it in silence, and none of it made sense. The Xerax taught him humans were selfish creatures, weak liars who betrayed each other for survival, monsters who destroyed worlds through greed. That was what the Empire repeated to him for years, again and again, until he believed it completely. But Elias was nothing like those stories. One night, Varthos saw the human give his own winter coat to an old worker, shaking in the snow. The freezing wind cut through Elias. Immediately still, he simply smiled and walked away. Before the old man could refuse, the dragon could not understand it. Why would someone suffer to protect strangers? Why help others when nobody helped him? The questions stayed inside Varthos like a growing fire. Then came the night everything changed. Sirens suddenly screamed across the settlement. Bright red lights flashed through the storm. Xerax soldiers had arrived. Black armored ships descended from the sky, while troops flooded the streets searching for hidden rebels. Workers ran in panic as blasters fired into the air. Doors were kicked open, families dragged outside. Anyone suspected of rebellion was beaten without mercy. Elias moved through the chaos, helping people escape through maintenance tunnels beneath the settlement. But then, an explosion ripped through the main generator tower. Burning metal crashed onto one of the housing blocks. Flames spread instantly across the frozen buildings, and somewhere inside the fire a child screamed for help. The workers froze in horror. Nobody could reach her. The heat was too strong. The collapsing metal would crush anyone who tried. Then suddenly, the sky thundered up. Giant shadow crashed into the burning street. The dragon roared as flames exploded around him. Without hesitation, he smashed through the burning debris with his claws. Molten steel burned against his scales. The tower above him began collapsing. Still he pushed deeper into the fire. Seconds later, he emerged, carrying the terrified child safely between his claws. The entire settlement went silent. Workers stared in shock at the monster standing before them. Some screamed, others grabbed weapons in fear, because everyone in the galaxy knew what Varthos was a killer, a destroyer of worlds. The child ran back to her mother, crying, while soldiers aimed blasters toward the dragon. One wrong move would start a massacre. Then Elias stepped forward, slowly, calmly. He stood directly between the workers and the dragon. Everyone expected fear in his eyes, but instead, Elias looked at Varthos with something the dragon had never seen before. Gratitude, thank you. The words hit harder than any weapon. Varthos stood frozen. Nobody had ever thanked him before. Nobody had ever looked at him without terror or hatred for the first time in his life. The dragon felt something inside his chest that frightened him more than war. Meanwhile, far across the stars, the Xerax commander watched the entire event through surveillance drones, and the Emperor became furious. His greatest weapon was changing. Immediately, a new order was sent across the galaxy. Varthos would execute Elias publicly, or the Empire would destroy the dragon himself. Asterisk. The storm above Narration 6 grew worse with every passing night. Freezing winds screamed across the mining planet, while fear spread through the settlement. Everyone knew the Empire would return soon. And this time, they would not show mercy. But before the attack came, Elias discovered something hidden beneath the old mining tunnels. It started with a strange symbol carved into a broken wall deep underground, a giant dragon circle covered in ancient human markings. The moment Varthos saw the symbol, he froze. Something inside his memory moved, a feeling buried deep beneath years of pain and control. Elias followed the markings through collapsed tunnels far below the planet's surface. Varthos walked beside him silently. The deeper they traveled, the older the ruins became. Ancient stone pillars appeared beneath layers of ice. Massive dragon statues stood covered in dust, and glowing writings stretched across the walls. In forgotten human language, Elias activated an old power core suddenly. Blue light flooded the chamber, then ancient recordings appeared in the air around them. What they saw changed everything. The recordings showed humans and dragons standing together thousands of years ago. Not as enemies, but as allies. Dragons flew beside human ships through the stars. Together they protected weaker worlds from cruel empires and warlords. Humans healed injured dragons. Dragons defended human colonies. They trusted each other completely. Varthos stared silently at the glowing images. His breathing slowed, because for the first time in his life, he saw dragons smiling beside humans. No chains, no fear, no hatred. Then the final recording played. The Xerax appeared at first. They pretended to seek peace, but secretly, the bond between dragons and humans. They spread lies through both races, manipulated leaders, started wars. Then when the alliance collapsed, the Empire attacked both sides at their weakest. Humans were nearly exterminated. Dragons were hunted across the galaxy. The survivors were captured and turned into weapons, just like Varthos. The dragon stepped backward slowly, as the truth crushed him. Everything he believed was a lie. The hatred inside him was never his own. The Empire created it. The memories of his dead parents burned inside his mind. The years of torture, the endless killing, all of it was built on manipulation. Varthos lowered his head in silence, while rage shook his entire body. But before Elias could speak, alarms suddenly echoed through the ruins. The ground trembled violently. Then came the sound of engines above the planet. The Xerax fleet had arrived. Hundreds of warships filled the frozen sky. Commander Xeran himself descended onto the mining world with thousands of soldiers and massive war machines. The settlement became surrounded within minutes. Nobody could escape. Xeran walked forward through the snow, wearing black armor glowing with red energy. His cold eyes locked onto Varthos immediately. Then he smiled. You were always weak. Suddenly, the control device hidden inside Varthos' armor activated. Pain exploded through the dragon body. Varthos roared in agony as energy chains burned beneath his scales. The device attacked his mind directly, forcing commands into his thoughts. Kill Elias, kill Elias, kill Elias. The dragon screamed and crashed against the frozen ground. Workers ran in terror while soldiers surrounded the ruins. Slowly, Varthos stood again. But his glowing eyes had changed. He turned toward Elias. Every step shook the ground beneath him. Smoke escaped from his jaws. Fire gathered between his teeth. Everyone watching believed the human was seconds away from death, but Elias did not run. He did not raise a weapon. Instead, he walked directly to the raging dragon. The heat burned against his skin. The fire melted the snow around him. Still, he kept moving closer. Varthos lifted his claws, shaking violently, while fighting the control inside his mind. Then Elias saw the glowing device buried beneath the dragon neck armor. Without hesitation, he jumped onto Varthos' shoulder. Flames exploded around him. The dragon roared so loudly the ruins cracked apart, but Elias held on, even as the fire burned his arms. Then with one final pull, he ripped the control device free. The machine shattered against the stone floor. Suddenly, silence filled the ruins. The red glow vanished from Varthos' eyes for the first time in his entire life. The dragon mind finally became free. The moment the control device shattered everything, changed. Varthos lifted his head slowly, while smoke escaped from his jaws. But this time the rage inside him was no longer controlled by the Empto now. It belonged to him, Commander. Zyron realized the truth too late. The dragon was finally free. Run, the commander screamed to his soldiers, but nobody could escape fast enough. Varthos unleashed a wall of fire across the frozen battlefield. The flames swallowed tanks, soldiers, and war machines. In seconds, explosions ripped through the snow-covered valley, while alien troops scattered in panic. For the first time in galactic history, the deadliest dragon ever created had turned against the Empire itself. The mining planet became a war zone. Overnight, alien ships filled the skies, firing. Plasma cannons toward the settlement buildings collapsed beneath endless bombardment. Workers grabbed stolen weapons and joined the fight beside Elias. The same frightened miners who once hid from the Empire now fought with fury in their eyes, because for the first time they believed the Xerax could actually lose. Elias moved through the battlefield, helping survivors and leading attacks against the soldiers. He was not a trained warrior, but people followed him anyway because he gave them something they had forgotten long ago: hope above them. Varthos tore through the sky like a living storm. Warships exploded around him. One by one, massive cruisers burned and crashed into the ice fields. Velo entire alien squadrons fled the moment the dragon appeared. Through the smoke across the galaxy, hidden broadcasts captured everything. People on distant worlds watched in disbelief as a dragon protected humans instead of killing them. The news spread faster than the Empire could stop it. Human colonies trapped in fear for years suddenly began rebelling. Factories explode, prisons opened, rebel fleets emerged from hiding. Even stranger reports soon followed from other parts of the galaxy. Captured dragons inside Imperial laboratories were revolting against their handlers. Some escaped their chains, others destroyed entire military bases before disappearing into deep space. Varthos' rebellion had awakened something ancient, something the Empire believed was already dead. The Emperor watched the chaos from his throne world in absolute fury. For the first time in decades, fear entered his mind. Not fear of war, but fear of losing control. His empire depended on Terra. Now Terra itself had turned against him, so the Emperor made one final decision: if the galaxy would not obey him, then the galaxy would burn. Deep beneath the imperial capital slept an ancient weapon known only as the Empire Korea machine, older than the Xyrax Empire itself, built during forgotten wars thousands of years ago. The super weapon possessed enough power to erase entire solar systems from existence. One activation could wipe out billions instantly. The best Emperor ordered the core to prepare for firing. His target was simple: destroy Narration 6, destroy every rebel colony, destroy Elias, anyone who dared challenge the Empire. When Elias learned about the weapon, his face turned pale. The Empire core activated, the rebellion would end before it truly began. There would be no future for humans, no future for dragons, only ashes across the star. So Elias made a desperate choice. The only way to stop the super weapon was to destroy it at the source, the imperial capital itself. It sounded impossible. No rebel fleet had ever reached the throne world and survived. The planet was protected by millions of warships, defense stations, and endless armies. But Varthos stepped beside Elias without hesitation. The dragon already knew what must happen. Together they gathered every rebel ship willing to fight, hold human fighters, stolen cargo vessels, prisoners, freed dragons emerging from hyperspace like shadows reborn from legend. Then the rebel fleet jumped toward the imperial capital, and the moment they arrived, everyone fell silent, because waiting before them was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Millions of enemy ships blocked the stars themselves, and at the center of it, all the Empire core slowly awakened with enough power to destroy worlds. The final battle began with fire across the stars. Thousands of warships crashed into each other above the imperial capital. Explosions lit the darkness like dying suns. Human rebel fighters raced between massive enemy cruisers, while freed dragons tore through the sky, breathing storms of flame. The galaxy had never seen a war like this before. For the first time, humans and dragons fought side by side again, and the Empire was terrified. Varthos led the attack straight through the center of the Imperial fleet. Enemy ships exploded around him, one after another. His roar echoed across space, while rebel forces pushed deeper toward the capital world. But the Empire still had more ships, more weapons, more soldiers. Slowly, the rebels began losing ground. Entire human squadrons vanished in walls of plasma fire. Dragons fell burning from the sky. The Imperial fleet closed in from every direction. And above the battlefield, the Empire core continued charging. Its giant energy ring glowed brighter with every passing second. If the weapon fired, the rebellion would end instantly. Billions would die before sunrise. Inside the chaos, Elias finally reached the central control chamber, hidden beneath the imperial palace. Ancient machines surrounded him, stretching deep below the planet's surface. Energy shook the walls, while alarms screamed through the halls. Then Elias discovered the terrible truth. The Empire core could not operate alone. It needed a living controller, connected directly to the machine, a mind powerful enough to command the destruction of entire systems. And the Emperor had willingly sacrificed billions across the galaxy for years to keep the weapon alive. Every destroyed planet, every genocide, every war, all of it fed the core. The Emperor entered the chamber, surrounded by royal guards. His face remained calm, even while the galaxy burned outside. Beside him stood Varthos, breathing heavily from battle scars and fresh wounds. The Emperor laughed as he looked At the dragon you were born a slave, built only to obey. No matter what kindness humans showed you, you will always be my weapon. For a moment silence filled the chamber. Then Varthos slowly stepped forward. The dragon eyes no longer carried fear, only pride, and finally he answered, "No, I choose my own fate." The words echoed through the throne room like thunder. Suddenly Varthos unleashed his full fury. Flames exploded across the chamber. Massive pillars shattered apart. The royal guards disappeared. Beneath dragonfire, the emperor screamed as the throne room collapsed around him. At the same time, Elias rushed toward the core controls. The machine fought back immediately. Energy surged through the system, shaking the entire planet. Warning sirens screamed across the capital. Outside, the battle suddenly paused as every ship saw the giant weapon becoming unstable. Elias forced himself deeper into the control system. Even as electricity burned across his body, one mistake would destroy the entire solar system. Then, finally, the core shut down. The glowing energy ring above the planet died instantly. Silence spread across space. The superweapon was gone. Panic exploded across the Imperial fleet. Soldiers began abandoning their positions. Captains fled the battlefield. The Empire was collapsing in real time. The Emperor barely escaped the ruined palace inside a royal command ship. But when his vessel reached orbit, it suddenly stopped moving because hundreds of dragons surrounded it. From every direction, freed dragons, the same creatures he tortured and enslaved for years. This time, nobody obeyed his orders. Nobody feared him anymore. The Emperor realized too late that his power had always depended on chains, and now every chain was broken. Within days, the Xerax Empire collapsed completely across the galaxy. Worlds celebrated their freedom for the first time in generations. Humans rebuilt colonies beside dragons once again. Old hatred disappeared, slowly replaced by trust and unliberated. Planets' giant statues were raised, honoring Elias and Varthos, together one human, one dragon. The two beings who changed the galaxy forever. For centuries, parents told their children the same story. Beneath the stars, the deadliest dragon ever created was never defeated by war, not by weapons, not by fear, but by one simple act of human kindness.